In a small town in the Midwest, where life moved at a slow and predictable pace, something extraordinary happened one quiet evening. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jack Miller, a hard-working mechanic with calloused hands and a kind smile, was outside his garage fixing an old truck. His wife, Laura, sat on the porch nearby, sipping tea and watching the stars begin to appear. The night seemed peaceful, but then something unusual caught Jack's eye. A strange light flickered in the distance, moving unnaturally fast across the sky. At first, he thought it might be a plane or a satellite, but as the light grew brighter and closer, he realized it wasn't anything ordinary. It descended silently, without the roar of engines or any sound at all, until it hovered just above the fields at the edge of town. Laura joined Jack, her curiosity turning into concern. "What is that?" she whispered, gripping his arm tightly. Neither of them had ever seen anything like it before. Moments later, the object landed with a soft thud, revealing itself to be a sleek, metallic craft unlike anything built on Earth. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the moonlight in odd patterns. Before they could react, the ship opened and creatures emerged. They were tall and thin, with elongated limbs and exoskeletons that gleamed like polished silver. Their eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, scanning everything around them. These were not humans. They were aliens, beings from another world. The townspeople who had gathered out of curiosity now froze in fear. The leader of the aliens stepped forward. He, or it, raised one claw-like hand, and suddenly, everyone heard a voice inside their heads. "We are the Vryle," it said, its tone cold and commanding. "You will submit to us." Most of the people dropped to their knees immediately, overwhelmed by the sheer strangeness of the situation. But Jack didn't move. His heart pounded in his chest, but he stood his ground. "Who do you think you are?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. The alien tilted its head, clearly surprised by his defiance. "You are primitive," it replied. "Your resistance is futile." Jack shook his head. "Maybe we're not as weak as you think." Laura tugged at his sleeve, urging him to stay quiet, but Jack refused to back down. Something about these creatures felt wrong, unnatural. They radiated power, yes, but also arrogance, as if they believed themselves superior to everyone else. And Jack, raised in a family that valued faith and resilience, couldn't bring himself to bow to them. The aliens scanned the crowd again, selecting a few individuals, including Jack and Laura, to come closer. When they resisted, the Vryle used some kind of energy field to pull them toward the ship. Screams echoed through the night as others were taken too, including Emma Lewis, a soft-spoken schoolteacher, and Ryan Carter, a burly farmer known for his calm demeanor. As the group was led aboard the alien craft, Jack glanced back at the town. Lights flickered in windows, and shadows moved behind curtains, neighbors too scared to intervene. For a moment, he wondered if this was how it would end, abducted by creatures from another world, never to return home. But deep down, he felt a spark of hope. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for sure: he wouldn't give up without a fight. Inside the ship, the air was cool and metallic, and the walls pulsed faintly, almost like they were alive. The aliens studied their captives with detached curiosity, as though they were specimens under a microscope. Yet even here, surrounded by the unknown, Jack held onto his resolve. If there was anyone watching over him, he prayed silently for strength. Little did he know, his courage would soon change everything, for both humanity and the Vryle. Once aboard the alien ship, Jack and the others found themselves in a vast, dimly lit chamber. The walls seemed to shimmer and shift, as if alive, and strange symbols glowed faintly on the surfaces. The air was cold and carried an odd metallic scent that made it hard to breathe comfortably. The Vryle moved silently around them, their glowing eyes scanning the captives like predators, sizing up prey. The aliens wasted no time. They separated the group, placing each person in individual pods that resembled glass coffins. Jack struggled against the restraints holding him down, but they were too strong. He could see Laura nearby, her face pale with fear, and Emma on the other side, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ryan, usually so stoic, clenched his fists and muttered under his breath, though his words were lost in the hum of the ship. Then the tests began. For hours, or maybe days, time felt meaningless inside the ship. The Vrel subjected them to relentless psychological torment. They projected vivid illusions directly into their minds, forcing them to relive their worst memories. Jack saw his younger brother's accident again, the moment when he'd failed to save him. The pain was fresh, raw, as if it were happening all over again. He could hear his brother's cries, feel the weight of guilt pressing down on him. Laura endured visions of losing her children, though she and Jack didn't have any yet. The aliens twisted her deepest desires into nightmares, showing her empty cribs and silent homes. Emma faced scenes of her students being hurt, while Ryan saw his farm burning to the ground, crops reduced to ash. Each illusion was designed to break them, to strip away their hope and willpower. Most of the captives crumbled under the pressure. Some screamed until their voices gave out. Others simply stared blankly, defeated. But Jack refused to give in. Even as the images tore at his heart, he closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. "Help me stay strong," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Let me show them what we're made of." To everyone's surprise, including the Vrizuo, Jack's defiance only grew stronger. While the others faltered, he clung to his faith, drawing strength from something the aliens couldn't understand. His quiet determination unsettled Calthic, the leader of the Vrel. For the first time, the alien hesitated, studying Jack with genuine curiosity. Back on Earth, the absence of the captives had not gone unnoticed. Ben Lewis, Emma's teenage son, noticed his mother hadn't come home after the strange lights appeared in the sky. Worried, he went to check on Ryan Carter, who lived nearby. When he found Ryan missing too, panic set in. Determined to do something, Ben reached out to Sarah, Ryan's cousin, and Paul, a retired Army veteran who lived on the outskirts of town. Together, they formed a search party, armed with flashlights, binoculars, and whatever tools they could find. They scoured the area where the ship had landed. The forest clearing showed signs of disturbance: burnt grass, broken branches, and strange marks on the ground. It was clear something massive had been there. As they investigated further, Sarah spotted one of the smaller drones guarding the perimeter. She suggested using EMP devices to disable it, remembering old stories about how such technology could disrupt electronics. Working quickly, Paul rigged together a makeshift device using parts from his workshop. With trembling hands, he activated it, and the drone sputtered and fell silent. Encouraged by their success, the group pressed on, creeping closer to the main ship. They knew the risks. They were just ordinary people facing an unknown enemy. But they couldn't abandon their loved ones. Every step brought them closer to danger, but also closer to answers. Meanwhile, aboard the ship, the Vrel intensified their experiments. Frustrated by Jack's continued resistance, they pushed harder, probing deeper into his mind. Yet no matter what horrors they showed him, Jack held firm. In those moments of despair, he felt a presence, a comforting warmth that reassured him he wasn't alone. Whether it was divine intervention or sheer human spirit, it kept him going. Kelthik watched closely, intrigued. For beings who valued logic above all else, the concept of faith baffled the Vrel. They had always assumed humans were weak, driven by emotion and chaos. But Jack proved otherwise. Slowly, doubt began to creep into the alien leader's thoughts. Perhaps these creatures weren't as primitive as they seemed. As the Vril continued their experiments, Jack's quiet defiance became a puzzle they couldn't solve. No matter how many illusions or painful memories they forced into his mind, he refused to break. Kelthik, the leader of the Vril, grew more curious about this human who seemed immune to their methods. He ordered his scientists to dig deeper into Earth's history, searching for clues in the vast database of information they had downloaded from human satellites and networks. What they found surprised them. Among the countless records of wars, inventions, and discoveries, there were countless references to something called faith. Ancient texts spoke of gods, prayers, and miracles. Stories of people overcoming impossible odds through belief in something greater than themselves appeared again and again. The Vrel, who relied solely on logic and science, struggled to comprehend these ideas. To them, faith was illogical, a weakness that should have made humans easier to control. Yet here was Jack, drawing strength from it, standing firm when all reason said he should collapse. One night, as the ship hummed with its usual eerie energy, the Vrel escalated their tests. They placed Jack in a new chamber, one designed to simulate his worst fears while amplifying his physical pain. The room grew dark, and suddenly, Jack was back in the hospital where his younger brother had died. He could hear the monitors beeping, see the doctors shaking their heads, feel the crushing weight of failure once more. But this time, the memory felt sharper, more real. His chest tightened, and tears welled up in his eyes. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Jack heard a voice. It wasn't loud or commanding. It was soft, almost like a whisper. "You are not alone," it said. At first, he thought it might be another trick by the Vrel, but the words brought an unexpected calm. A warmth spread through his body, easing the ache in his heart. He closed his eyes and prayed silently, asking for strength to endure. To the Vrel's astonishment, something strange happened. The lights in the chamber flickered, and the machines monitoring Jack's vital signs began to malfunction. Even Kelthik, watching from a nearby control room, felt a sudden chill run through his exoskeleton, a sensation he had never experienced before. Fear, doubt, emotions that were foreign to the coldly logical Vrel. Confused and alarmed, Kelthik ordered the test stopped. He approached Jack personally, his glowing eyes narrowing as he studied the human. "What are you?" he asked, his telepathic voice tinged with uncertainty. Jack looked up, his face pale but resolute. "I'm just a man," he replied. "But I believe in something bigger than myself, something you'll never understand." Kelthik didn't respond immediately. Instead, he retreated to the ship's main console, sifting through the human data once more. He focused on religious texts, the Bible, the Quran, Buddhist teachings, and others. Each one emphasized values like love, sacrifice, and free will. These concepts were alien to the Vrel, who lived in a society governed by strict rules and calculations. For the first time, Kelthik wondered if humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or intelligence, but its ability to hope, to dream, and to believe. Back on Earth, Ben, Sarah, and Paul worked tirelessly to locate the ship. After disabling the drone, they discovered a weak spot in the ship's defenses, a small access hatch near the base. Using tools borrowed from Paul's workshop, they managed to pry it open just enough to slip inside. The interior was dimly lit, with pulsating walls that seemed alive. Every sound echoed loudly, making them nervous about being discovered. "We need to find them fast," Sarah whispered, clutching a flashlight. "If we get caught." "We won't," Ben interrupted firmly. Though only a teenager, his determination inspired the others. They moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows, listening for any sign of the captives. Meanwhile, aboard the ship, Laura and Emma noticed a change in the Vrel's behavior. The aliens, usually so confident and detached, now seemed uneasy. Laura leaned toward Emma and whispered, "Something's happening. Maybe Jack's getting to them." Emma nodded, her voice trembling but hopeful. "If anyone can do it, it's him." Unbeknownst to them, Kelthik was already reconsidering the mission. The humans weren't behaving as predicted. They weren't cowering or begging for mercy. Instead, they were resisting, even inspiring each other to hold on. For the first time, The Vrel leader questioned whether conquering Earth would truly be worth the cost. Inside the alien ship, tensions were rising. The Vrel had always prided themselves on their superior intellect and advanced technology. They viewed other species as lesser beings, easily controlled or eliminated if necessary. But Jack's unwavering resistance was beginning to unravel their confidence. Kelthik, the leader of the Vrel, couldn't ignore the strange occurrences linked to this human. Machines malfunctioned when Jack prayed. His captors felt emotions they couldn't explain. Fear, doubt, even curiosity. For a race that valued logic above all else, these developments were unsettling. Meanwhile, Ben, Sarah, and Paul crept deeper into the ship through narrow corridors, dimly lit by pulsating walls. Every step felt heavier than the last, the air thick with an eerie silence broken only by the hum of alien machinery. They moved carefully, sticking close together, their flashlights casting shaky beams ahead of them. Ben led the way, clutching a wrench he brought from Paul's workshop. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it made him feel less helpless. "We need to find my mom," Ben whispered urgently, his voice barely audible. "She's got to be here somewhere." Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the hallway for any sign of movement. "And Ryan too. If we can free them, maybe they can help us figure out how to stop these things." Paul stayed quiet, his military training kicking in. He kept watch behind them, ensuring no one, or nothing, snuck up on the group. The retired veteran knew better than anyone how dangerous it was to wander blindly into enemy territory. Still, he couldn't abandon the others, not when there was a chance to save innocent lives. Back in the testing chambers, Jack's resilience continued to inspire those around him. Laura, who had been trembling with fear since their capture, found herself straightening her posture. She glanced at Emma, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. Even Ryan, the burly farmer, seemed to draw strength from Jack's example. Though none of them fully understood what gave Jack such courage, they decided to follow his lead. One evening, during a brief pause in the experiments, Laura leaned toward Jack and whispered, "How do you keep going? How are you not scared?" Jack smiled faintly, his face pale but calm. "I am scared," he admitted, "but I believe we're stronger than they think. We've got something they don't understand." "What's that?" Emma asked softly, her voice filled with hope. "Faith," Jack replied simply. "And each other." His words spread quietly among the captives, reigniting a spark of defiance. When the Vrel returned to continue their tests, they noticed a change. The humans weren't as submissive as before. Some refused to look away when the aliens approached. Others muttered prayers or spoke words of encouragement to one another. The shift was subtle but undeniable. Kelthik observed this new behavior with growing unease. He called a meeting with his subordinates, their glowing eyes flickering as they communicated telepathically. "These humans defy logic," he said. "They resist despite overwhelming odds. Their belief in something intangible gives them strength. What should we do?" The other Vrel hesitated, unsure how to respond. Conquering Earth suddenly seemed more complicated than anticipated. Humans weren't predictable like other species they had encountered. They were unpredictable, emotional, and driven by forces beyond reason. While the Vrel debated their next move, Ben and his team stumbled upon a large chamber filled with pods similar to the ones holding the captives. Through the glass-like surfaces, they spotted familiar faces: Laura, Emma, Ryan, and finally, Jack. Relief washed over them, but they knew they had to act quickly. Ben pointed to a control panel near the pods. "If we can disable that, maybe we can get them out." Paul stepped forward, examining the panel. "It looks complicated, but I think I can figure it out." With shaking hands, he began tinkering with the alien mechanisms, guided by instinct and years of experience repairing machinery. As the seconds ticked by, the group held their breath, praying the Vrel wouldn't return. Finally, with a soft click, the pods opened, releasing the captives. Jack blinked in disbelief, then grinned when he saw Ben standing there. "You came for us," he said, his voice hoarse but full of gratitude. "We weren't about to leave you," Ben replied, handing Jack the wrench. "Now let's get out of here." Together, the reunited group prepared to make their escape, unaware that the Vril were already questioning whether humanity was truly an enemy, or perhaps something far more remarkable. The escape from the alien ship was anything but smooth. As soon as the pods opened, alarms blared throughout the vessel, piercing the air with a high-pitched wail that sent shivers down everyone's spines. The walls of the ship seemed to pulse faster, glowing brighter as if reacting to the chaos unfolding within. Jack, Laura, Emma, and Ryan hurried out of their restraints, joining Ben, Sarah, and Paul in the corridor. For a moment, they simply stood there, catching their breath, and trying to process what had just happened. "We need to move. Now," Paul barked, his voice firm but calm. He'd been in tight situations before during his time in the army, and he knew hesitation could cost them dearly. Without wasting another second, the group sprinted down the narrow hallway, following the same route Ben and the others had used to sneak in. Behind them, the Vril scrambled to respond. Kelthik issued sharp commands telepathically, his glowing eyes narrowing with frustration. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Humans were meant to be weak, easily broken. Yet here they were, resisting not only the tests, but also their captivity itself. It made no sense to him. And for the first time in centuries, the Vril leader felt something akin to doubt. As the humans raced through the ship, dodging strange machinery and pulsating walls, Jack took charge. "Stay together," he shouted over the noise of the alarms. "If we split up, we're done for." Laura clutched his arm tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted nothing more than to collapse and cry, but she forced herself to keep moving. Beside her, Emma held onto Ryan's hand, her legs trembling but determined. Ben led the way, clutching the makeshift EMP device they'd used earlier, ready to use it again if needed. They reached the access hatch where Ben, Sarah, and Paul had entered the ship, but as they approached, a group of Vril blocked their path. The aliens stood tall and imposing, their claw-like hands raised in warning. Their glowing eyes scanned the humans, radiating menace. Jack stepped forward, shielding the others with his body. His voice was steady despite the fear coursing through him. "You don't understand us," he said loudly, meeting Kelthik's gaze. "You think we're primitive because we feel pain or cry or laugh. But those things are what make us strong. We believe in something greater than ourselves. That's why you'll never break us." Kelthik tilted his head, studying Jack intently. There was something about this human, a quiet confidence, a spark of defiance, that intrigued him. For all their arrogance, the Vril couldn't deny that humanity possessed qualities they didn't fully comprehend. Faith, courage, love. These weren't weaknesses, they were strengths. Before anyone could react further, Paul activated the EMP device. The burst of energy surged through the corridor, causing the lights to flicker and the Vril to stagger back. The distraction gave the group enough time to slip past the aliens and climb out of the hatch. Once outside, the cool night air hit them like a wave. They stumbled into the forest, their hearts racing as they ran toward safety. Behind them, the alien ship hummed louder, its systems recovering from the EMP blast. Kelthik watched them go, his thoughts swirling with uncertainty. Were these humans truly a threat, or did they represent something far more valuable? Back at the edge of the woods, the reunited group collapsed onto the damp ground, gasping for breath. Jack looked around at his family, friends, and rescuers, feeling an overwhelming mix of relief and pride. Against all odds, they had survived. But as they caught their breath and began planning their next steps, none of them realized that the Vril were already reconsidering their mission. Humanity had proven itself to be far more complex and far more remarkable than the aliens had ever imagined. The alien ship loomed above the forest clearing, its sleek surface glowing faintly under the moonlight. Inside, Kelthik stood in the command chamber, his glowing eyes reflecting a mix of frustration and confusion. The humans had escaped, but that wasn't what troubled him most. It was their defiance, their inexplicable strength that gnawed at his mind. For centuries, the Vril had believed themselves superior to all other species, their cold logic and advanced technology making them nearly gods among lesser beings. Yet here were these fragile humans, resisting not with weapons or force, but with something far more elusive: belief. Kelthic's subordinates gathered around him, their telepathic voices buzzing with unease. "What do we do now?" one asked. "They are unpredictable. Dangerous. Dangerous." Kelthic repeated, his tone sharp. "They are primitive, emotional, weak." But even as he said the words, doubt lingered in his thoughts. Jack's speech echoed in his mind. His claim that humanity drew strength from faith, love, and sacrifice. These were concepts the Vril had no understanding of, yet they seemed to give humans an unshakable resilience. A heated debate broke out among the Vril. Some argued that Earth posed too great a risk to the galaxy if left unchecked. Humans were emotional, volatile, and capable of destruction on a massive scale. Others, influenced by Kelthic's growing uncertainty, suggested that perhaps humanity was not a threat, but an opportunity. Could there be value in studying these strange creatures further? Could their peculiar strengths teach the Vril something about themselves? As the argument raged on, Kelthic made a decision. He raised a claw-like hand, silencing his crew. "We will leave this planet," he announced. His voice carried authority, though it wavered slightly with hesitation. "But we will not harm them. Not yet." The announcement shocked the others. "Why spare them?" one Vril demanded. "They could become a danger to us." "They already are," Kelthic replied. "But not in the way we thought. Their power does not come from weapons or technology. It comes from within, from something we cannot measure or control. To destroy them now would be illogical." Outside the ship, Jack and the others huddled together in the woods, catching their breath. The adrenaline from their escape was wearing off, leaving them exhausted but alive. Ben clutched the EMP device tightly, ready to use it again if necessary, while Paul kept a watchful eye on the ship. Sarah knelt beside Emma, checking for injuries, and Laura held onto Jack's arm, her body trembling with relief. "We did it," Ryan said finally, breaking the silence. His deep voice was filled with awe. "We actually got away." "For now," Jack added quietly. He glanced back at the ship, his expression thoughtful. "But I don't think this is over. They'll be watching us." Emma nodded, her face pale but determined. "Whatever happens next, we have to stick together. That's how we survived this time." As dawn began to break, the alien ship hummed louder. Its shimmering surface rippled like water before it slowly ascended into the sky. The group watched in stunned silence as the craft disappeared into the clouds, leaving behind only a faint glow in the early morning light. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jack stepped forward, addressing the group. "This isn't just about us," he said firmly. "Those aliens, they underestimated us because they didn't understand us. But we showed them who we really are. We're stronger than they thought. Smarter. Better." His words resonated deeply with everyone. Even Paul, who rarely showed emotion, nodded in agreement. "He's right," the veteran said gruffly. "If those things ever come back, we'll be ready." The group began walking back toward town, their steps slow but steady. They knew life wouldn't return to normal immediately. Too much had changed, but they also knew they had faced the impossible and won. Together. Back aboard the ship, Kelthic gazed down at Earth one last time before giving the order to leave orbit. As the planet shrank into the distance, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Vril had encountered something extraordinary. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or intellect, it was their spirit. And maybe, just maybe, that spirit was worth preserving. With a final glance at the blue-green orb floating in the void, the ship vanished into the stars, leaving Earth, and its resilient inhabitants behind. Weeks passed after the alien ship disappeared, but life in the small Midwestern town would never be the same. The townspeople whispered about what had happened that night, sharing stories of strange lights in the sky and the bravery of those who had faced the unknown. Jack and Laura returned to their quiet lives, though they often found themselves sitting on the porch at night, staring up at the stars. Something about the experience had changed them, deepened their faith, strengthened their bond, and left them with a lingering sense of purpose. Ben became something of a local hero. His quick thinking and determination had saved his mother and the others, and people couldn't stop talking about how a teenager had outsmarted aliens. But fame wasn't what mattered most to him. What stayed with him was the memory of seeing Emma safe again, the relief washing over her face as she hugged him tightly. He decided then that he wanted to do more, to help protect others from whatever might come next. Sarah, too, felt a new calling. She began organizing meetings with other townsfolk, urging them to prepare for the possibility of another encounter. "We got lucky this time," she told anyone who would listen. "But we can't count on luck forever. We need to be ready." Her efforts inspired some, though others dismissed her warnings as paranoia. Still, she pressed on, determined to make a difference. Hall spent his days teaching the group basic survival skills. A retired Army veteran, he knew the importance of being prepared for the worst. He showed them how to use makeshift tools, set traps, and navigate without modern technology. "You never know when you'll need these skills," he said gruffly, though his eyes softened when he saw how eager everyone was to learn. Meanwhile, Ryan returned to his farm, but he wasn't the same man who had left. The experience had opened his eyes to the fragility of life and the strength of community. He started hosting gatherings at his barn, bringing people together to share meals and talk about the future. It wasn't just about farming anymore. It was about connection, about standing united no matter what challenges lay ahead. The Vroyle, however, hadn't forgotten Earth. Though they had departed, they left behind a gift, a sleek metallic device embedded with glowing symbols. It appeared one morning near the edge of the forest, drawing curious crowds. Scientists arrived from across the country to study it, marveling at its advanced design. No one could figure out exactly what it did, but theories abounded. Some thought it was a communication device. Others believed it held secrets to incredible technology. Jack visited the site often, standing silently before the object. He didn't trust it, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that it was meant for them, for humanity. One evening, as he stood there alone, he heard that familiar whisper again. The same gentle voice that had comforted him aboard the ship. "Be wise," it said softly. "Use this gift well." News of the artifact spread quickly, sparking debates around the world. Governments argued over who should control it, while activists warned of the dangers of wielding power they didn't fully understand. Amid the chaos, Jack spoke publicly for the first time, addressing a crowd gathered near the device. His words were simple but powerful. "This isn't just about us," he said, his voice steady. "It's about all of humanity. Whatever this thing is, it's a test. Are we ready to handle it responsibly? To use it for good instead of greed or fear?" His speech resonated deeply, inspiring many to rethink their priorities. Slowly, leaders began working together, forming committees to study the artifact and ensure its potential was used ethically. For the first time in history, nations set aside their differences to focus on a common goal. Far away, aboard their ship, the Vroyle watched Earth closely. Kelthik observed the humans' progress with growing curiosity. They were flawed, yes, but also remarkable. Their ability to adapt, to unite, to hope. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Perhaps leaving the device behind had been the right choice after all. As the months turned into years, humanity continued to grow stronger, wiser, and more united. And though the stars remained silent, the people of Earth knew one thing for certain. They had faced the unknown and proven themselves worthy, not just of survival, but of something greater. Years passed, and the memory of the alien encounter began to fade for some. but not for everyone. Jack and Laura still sat on their porch at night, watching the stars. The events of that fateful evening had left an indelible mark on them, shaping how they saw the world and themselves. Jack often thought about the Vril, wondering if they were still out there, observing Earth from afar. He hoped they had learned something from their brief visit, something about the strength and resilience of humanity. The artifact the Vril had left behind became a symbol of unity for the world. Scientists worked tirelessly to unlock its secrets, and while progress was slow, they made remarkable discoveries. The device seemed to hold knowledge far beyond human understanding, offering insights into medicine, energy, and even space travel. But more importantly, it taught people the value of cooperation. Nations that had once been divided now collaborated openly, sharing resources and ideas for the greater good. Ben grew into a young man driven by purpose. Inspired by his role in rescuing the captives, he pursued a career in engineering, focusing on developing technologies to protect Earth from future threats. His work earned him recognition, but what mattered most to him was knowing he was contributing to something bigger than himself. On weekends, he visited Emma, who had become a teacher dedicated to inspiring her students to dream big and believe in their potential. Sarah remained a pillar of strength in the community, organizing programs to educate people about preparedness and resilience. Her efforts extended beyond the town, reaching cities across the country. She often spoke about the importance of standing together, reminding everyone that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its weapons or technology, but in its ability to care for one another. Paul spent his days mentoring younger generations, teaching them survival skills and life lessons. Though he rarely spoke about his time in the army, his experiences shaped the wisdom he passed on to others. Strength isn't just about physical power, he would say. It's about heart, about doing what's right, even when it's hard. Ryan's farm thrived, becoming a gathering place for the community. People came not just for fresh produce, but for the sense of belonging it offered. Ryan believed in the power of connection, hosting events where neighbors could come together to share stories, laughter, and hope for the future. As Earth continued to evolve, the Vril watched silently from the stars. Kelthik reflected on their decision to leave the artifact behind. Humanity had proven itself capable of growth, of learning, of rising above its flaws. Their courage, compassion, and faith had shown the Vril a side of existence they had never considered, one rooted in emotion and belief rather than pure logic. One day, as Jack stood before the artifact, he felt that familiar whisper again. This time, the voice was clearer. "You are ready," it said. The symbols on the device glowed brightly, then faded, leaving behind only smooth metal. It was as if the Vril's gift had served its purpose, guiding humanity toward a brighter future. That night, Jack shared the news with his family and friends. They gathered around a bonfire, laughing, talking, and dreaming of what lay ahead. For the first time in years, Jack felt a deep sense of peace. Humanity had faced the unknown and emerged stronger, not because of superior weapons or intellect, but because of its spirit. As the fire crackled and sparks danced toward the sky, Jack looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vril were watching. And though the aliens had once seen humans as primitive, Jack knew they now understood the truth. Humanity was made in God's image, capable of love, sacrifice, and boundless hope. In the quiet moments that followed, Jack whispered a prayer of gratitude. Whatever challenges the future held, he knew humanity would face them together, with faith, courage, and the unshakable belief that they were stronger than anyone, including the Vril, had ever imagined. The years rolled on, and Earth entered a new era of progress and unity. The artifact left by the Vril had sparked a chain reaction of innovation and cooperation that transformed the planet. Renewable energy sources replaced fossil fuels. Curing diseases once thought incurable became possible, and humanity took its first steps toward exploring the stars. Yet despite all these advancements, people never forgot the lesson they had learned from their encounter with the Vril. True strength came not from technology or power, but from the bonds they shared and the values they held dear. Jack and Laura grew older, their hair streaked with gray, but their spirits remained as strong as ever. They often visited schools and community centers, sharing their story with younger generations. Jack would stand before wide-eyed children, his voice steady and warm. "We faced something we didn't understand," he'd say, "but we didn't give up. We stood together, believed in each other, and proved that no challenge is too big if we face it as one." Ben, now an accomplished engineer, played a key role in designing spacecraft capable of traveling beyond Earth's solar system. His dream was to explore the stars and perhaps one day meet the Vrail again, not as enemies, but as equals. He worked closely with Emma, who had become a leading advocate for education and peace. Together, they inspired countless young minds to look to the future with hope and determination. Sarah continued her efforts to prepare communities for the unknown. Though the immediate threat of alien encounters had faded, she reminded everyone that being ready wasn't just about survival, it was about staying united. Her programs reached millions, teaching people how to work together and support one another in times of need. Paul spent his later years writing stories about his life, including the night he helped rescue Jack and the others. His tales became beloved books, read by families around the world. Through his words, he passed on lessons of resilience, courage, and the importance of standing up for what was right. Ryan's farm became a symbol of sustainability and community. It wasn't just a place to grow food. It was a hub where people gathered to celebrate milestones, share meals, and build lasting connections. Ryan often said, "A strong community is like fertile soil. It nurtures everything planted in it." Far away, aboard their ship, the Vril observed Earth's transformation with quiet admiration. Celtic, now older and wiser, reflected on the decision to leave the artifact behind. Humanity had risen to the challenge, proving themselves not only capable of growth, but also worthy of trust. For the first time in centuries, the Vril began considering alliances rather than conquests. One evening, as Jack sat on his porch with Laura, a bright light appeared in the sky. It wasn't a star or a plane. It was a ship, descending slowly toward Earth. Word spread quickly, and soon the entire town gathered outside, watching in awe as the craft landed gently in an open field. The Vril emerged, their glowing eyes softer this time, less intimidating. Celtic stepped forward, addressing the crowd telepathically. "We have watched your progress," he said. "You have shown us that strength is not measured by logic alone, but by heart. We wish to learn from you, and perhaps teach you in return." Jack stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly but his voice firm. "We're ready," he said. "Let's build something together." As humans and Vril stood side by side under the starlit sky, a new chapter began, not of fear or conflict, but of understanding and partnership. Humanity had proven itself worthy, not because of its weapons or intellect, but because of its spirit. And in that moment, Jack knew they had truly fulfilled the promise written in the stars. That humanity was made in God's image, destined to shine brightly among the cosmos.